Hi, welcome back to the shop. Thanks for stopping by. This week's project, we're going to turn an ash bowl, and I think we might ebonize the outside with some lacquer and maybe use some embellishing wax. I've done a similar one to this before, and it was the first one that I did, so I learned a few lessons from that, and hopefully I'll have a little easier time of it this time. So I'm just going to mount, I found my center. I'm just going to mount this on a faceplate with a sacrificial block using hot melt glue. I'm just going to put a bead around the faceplate. Push that down good. And then go around the outside edge with a bead. Alright, we'll give that a few minutes to set up. We'll get her on the lathe. Alright. So you can see that this is out of shape. It ovaled when it dried. Got a little bit out of round. So I'm going to bring this, going to true up the face, true up the outside. Then I'm going to go in because it's oval on the inside as well. And I'm just going to cut the inside so it's smooth as well. Alright, so you can see how out of balance the inside is as well. So I'm just going to bring this, I'm just going to true this up. That just makes the whole piece run more smoothly. I find I get a better finish when I do it that way. Alright, so the inside is nice and smooth now, nice and round, so we can go back to the outside. You can see the cut going from bottom to the lip is much smoother cut. There's not really room to get in here with the chisel, and that's a hard cut to do. Hard to do a pull cut on that from the angle that I have to stand at, but you can see it's much cleaner than it was going the other way, which is this cut here. So I got a little more to take off the lip here. that sound that you hear is this little crack right here. So I'm going to fill this up with some thin CA glue. I'm going to use some Starbond thin CA, and there's a discount code in the description if you need some CA glue. Get you 10% off. And I'm just going to let that run right down into that crack. And you can see that it's coming, if you can see or not, but it's coming through the crack on the inside, so it's getting all the way down through. Just going to give it a little shot of accelerator now. That crack's filled in really nicely. And we got a nice round edge all the way. So I'm just going to clean up some tool lines here. And because that's so awkward to get into the pull, I'm going to do this with a very sharp scraper, and it's got a wire edge on it. So it actually works like a shear cut. And you can see that tool freshly ground with that wire edge leaves a nice finish on it. So it's not going to take long to sand. I'm going to sand the outside up off camera, and I'll bring it back when we're hollowing out the center. Alright, so we got the outside all sanded up to 800 grit here now. One thing about ash is a lot of variation in the hardness of the wood in between the grain lines. And so when you get out here where you're turning basically flat grain, it does tend to over sand that, and so you can just feel it. So what I do when I power sand ash is I keep the lathe speed up quite high so that it doesn't get a chance to get down in there as much as it would if you were going slower. So you can feel the grain lines here, you can't feel them here, but it's not certainly not bad. So I'm going to bring you around now, and we're going to do the inside. So I've been asked why I finish off the outside, sand up the outside before I do the inside. And you can see just by making that cut, the tension, there's tension in wood, and when you make the walls thinner, the tension can come out. So you can see that the outside of that lip is no longer running true like it was before. And that's why I finished the outside. It would be very difficult to get a good sanded finish on the outside of that piece with it out like that. Alright, that's a good wall thickness all the way. Got a little bit extra in the bottom, just enough that I can concave it slightly. So the bottom right now is about a 1/2 inch. These walls here are approximately 3/8, and so when I concave that bottom, I'll have a nice 3/8 thick walled bowl all the way around. I'm going to just round these edges a little bit. Alright, now I'm going to sand this up off camera. Alright, so a couple things. You'll notice that I put the CA glue on to seal the crack when the walls were still very thick. And the reason that I did that is because it will discolor your wood. But I knew I was going to be cutting a lot off the inside, so you can see very, very slightly where the crack was. So I turned a lot of wood off. Now when we get to the top and we start doing, I'm going to color the outside. So when we get to the top, I'll show you the difference because I just took a skim off the outside. And you can see where the CA glue was, but it's not as prominent by any, or it's much more prominent on the outside than it is here. So if you put your CA glue on when your wood is thick, and then you can turn it back off and you won't notice it because it will discolor your wood otherwise. So because we're not going to put color on the inside or on the lip of the bowl, I'm going to use sanding sealer now. I'm going to seal this up. Right now it's sanded to 240 grit. I'm going to seal it up with sanding sealer, and we're going to use Yorkshire grit regular and microfine on the inside. The reason I'm not going to put sanding sealer on the outside is because I don't want to fill the pores. I'm going to use embellishing wax, and I want the embellishing wax to be able to go into the pores. That's what's going to give it the effect. And this is Mylands sanding sealer, and I used to be able to get it from Rob Summerlin at Woodslee Summercraft in Ontario, here in Canada. But there's an issue of some sort with Mylands and for importing it to Canada, so it's not available any longer, at least not right now. Hopefully someday again. And I'm being really careful not to get this on my outside because I don't want to fill those pores. We're going to give that a couple of coats, just give it a second to dry. Alright, so first we're going to put on an application of Yorkshire grit regular, which will get me from the 240 up to 1,000, and then we're going to use the microfine after that. That'll go from 1,000 up to 1,500. What we're going to do is put it on a cloth. Work it around. Now I'm going to drag this from the inside to the lip because I don't want to drag it over into the outside of the bowl. So I'll be very careful that I don't get any on the outside. And you can color over it, that's not an issue, but I just don't want the pores of the wood filled with anything. Turn your speed down to about 500, between 450 and 600, I guess. Same speed as you would sand normally. Just work it in. And if you do a good job with your 240 grit sandpaper so that the only thing left in your bowl or in your piece for defect is the sanding lines from the 240 grit paper, then this stuff will put a perfect finish on. If you didn't do a good job and you still have 180 grit lines or 120 grit lines, those lines are still going to be there, and you're going to have to do this a whack of times. So you got to get a really good 240 for this to work properly. And as you can see, there are no lines in that. It works really nice. All right, so now we're going to go to the microfine. Exact same process. Okay, we're finished on the inside. I'm going to use Hampshire Sheen High Gloss. Now my Hampshire Sheen High Gloss is a little bit hard. It's not quite pasty like it should be. I've had it a while. Still works fine, but normally you would just wipe this on the bowl the same way I did the Yorkshire grit. But because it's a little bit hard, I'm going to put it on with the bowl turning. Now you want to turn your RPM up for this so that it'll melt in good. Not too much at a time. Now, unless something bad happens, we are done with the inside. Alright, so if you saw the video of the first time I did this, I held my lacquer way too close to the piece and I filled every pore up, so I'm going to try not to do that again. Alright, I've given this about a half an hour to dry up here now, and as you can see the pores are still nice and open, so it should take this embellishing wax. This is Hampshire Sheen Bronze, which I got also from Woodslee Summercraft, and I've got a link to Rob's shop in the description. Alright, so what we're going to do is we're going to take this and we're going to wipe it all over the outside, rubbing it into the pores as good as we can. This is turning out much better than the first attempt. I'll put a link to the first go around at this. Actually, it's a very similar style bowl. It's exactly the same kind of wood. But I always wanted to get back to it to see if I could do it better. And I think this is better. I'm just going to buff this in. Now I'm going to give that some time to set up a little bit. Then I'll part off my glue and I'll probably dissolve it with some alcohol so that I don't pop the bottom out, because ash is prone to splitting out if you pry it off. The wax is set now, and happy with how that worked out. Much better than my first attempt. So now I'm just going to cut the glue off the bottom. Now my only concern when I use the denatured alcohol in here is if it's going to do anything to my wax finish. So I'm going to use isopropyl alcohol, which usually I find works even better than denatured alcohol. I'm just going to let it drop in here nice and gently with the brush so that it doesn't get too far away from where I want it. Now if you saw the last time I did one of these, I mounted this on a faceplate and put some spots of hot melt glue around the outside edges, and it lifted my wax, and so I'm not going to do that this time. There. Nice and clean. Alright, so it did fit in my cold jaws, thankfully. They're right out to the limit of them, but it fits. So I'm going to put a tailstock up on this just till I get this first cut in here. I don't want to take as few chances as I can. I've got a tailstock with no brad in it, so it won't put a hole in the bottom. little high in the center still, so I gotta take a look. All right, so we are concave there, we're not touching anywhere, so it's gonna sit nice and flat. Now it's important at this stage to be really careful with the sandpaper and not to get off and touch this because it will make a mess of it. So I'm gonna sand this up off camera, I'll bring you back when I put the finish on. All right, so everything's all sanded up to 800 grit. I'm not gonna put sanding sealer on this outside just because I don't wanna take a chance on it getting over into my finish. So I'm just gonna put Hampshire Sheen high gloss on it. All right, that worked out just fine. So they didn't make any marks, so that's great. All right, I'm gonna take it over to the laser and put my logo on the bottom. If you're still with me, thanks for sticking around. I really appreciate it. Thanks again to everyone who watches my videos and subscribes to the channel. I appreciate that a ton as well. If you haven't subscribed and you like what you saw, please consider doing so. It doesn't cost you anything and it helps the channel out a lot. I'll put some pictures up at the end, the same as usual, and we'll see you next time.